method for cutting this harness back, because you need the amplifier leads in the cab. So you have to separate this whole harness, is using cuticle scissors. You can do it with a blade, but I find I nick wires more often. So the cuticle scissors work pretty well. Just coming in on this tape, and you just got to be careful that you don't get a wire. It's all very gummy, depends on the age of your car, but you get the principle there. Now, as you get to, some of these sections have a hard plastic, so you need to cut the tape off the plastic and then pull the plastic off, and it's exposed. With the harness all stripped, now we can show where the pieces of that harness is going to go, where they're going to go, and why we needed to strip all that off. So it's kind of laying in place. You've got that harness, and we've now cut it apart. This goes out to the left, the passenger side of the car. We leave that alone. The driver's side of the car tail lights, we leave that alone. This is what was hooked to the amp. So we're bringing that forward, and halfway up, you will intercept the driver's side speaker lead. I add that to that harness, and I'm just working it so I can get that up into the cab. Let's see. Oh, yep, nope. Sometimes you have to kind of unwind it. You'll get stuff sticks together. Being careful with this piece.
That's it.
This is your wheel sensor lead, and if that gets nicked, you'll get check engine light. If you have stabilization control, it won't work, etc. So be a little bit ABS. Yeah, the ABS light, that pain in the butt light. So we are just taking those two. Why is this one not coming out? Okay. One more piece here. This connector, that's the harness that goes up through the hatch. A bunch of different approaches. My approach is to just unhook it and throw it away.
Just unhooking with a VW is a relative term, right? For those fasteners.
Yeah, I thought I was just going to make that quick, but it's always when you're on video, you're like, oh, I can't get it down. There we go. So there's a little keeper you got to depress, and you unplug it. That whole piece of harness can go away. Now, what you do with this is up to your creativity. There is rear window defrost, is that big white one. The red with black stripe, which is consistent through the car, is brake light. There is a standard ground, is straight black, and there's a black brown with black stripe, which is a switched ground. And
the last brown?
The hatch, the trigger, the remote trigger.
Solenoid, yeah.
So if you want to get creative with that, me personally, I like to use that white lead for some big power backup lights. That then when you push the defrost button, that turns on some big backup lights when you're hooking on a trailer. It's a dark night, what have you. What did Carl say he used his for?
What'd you use your big power lead for, Carl?
Backup camera. Backup camera. You can use that. That's a nice heavy duty circuit that will come, it's already switched with that switch on the dash, so that's pretty handy. If you're not doing anything with it, put a plastic baggie on it and a rubber band and leave it laying there in case later on you figure something else out and you already have that wiring through this piece that's going to be hard to get wires through later.
I mean, switched
power wiring in general is just a great thing.
It's already done.
Yeah,
it's all there. So let's
somebody, even if we don't have it today, somebody's going to come up with the greatest application of all time. You
That,
just don't know who it is yet.
That piece. I've heard another story from somebody else about what they did with that wire. I'm drawing blank. The same is true if you have the CD changer. You can strip that all the way back to the cab, cut it off, but there is a red power wire in there that you'll want to make sure you cap, so you don't have just the red one there as a power wire. Or again, you can put a balloon or a plastic bag and a rubber band, leave that in there, and if you come up with something later that you want to use that for.
I mean, I can imagine, especially guys like Chris Kingston that run the air ride system. The heavier gauge positives. Energizing your air ride system with a switch on the dash, you know, it just makes good sense.
There's all kinds of cool
Those
stuff.
compressors draw a lot of amps, you know. You're going to want that defrost circuit, you know, for the air ride. But whatever you use it for, I like Andy's idea of just keeping those switched leads available.
So it takes a little bit of time to kind of unwind it and take your time with it so you don't, obviously you don't want to break a wire.
I mean, I did this yesterday, and it's the same half hour of futzing around with it.
Yeah.
And then you're done. You know, correcting what I said the other day, Andy, about the amp or no amp. Really, if you have, say it again, if you have a monsoon system, not only ohms of the speakers, but that the radio won't work.
Correct.
If you don't run it.
Yes. And a disclaimer that we should have started this with is that whole harness only exists in monsoon equipped cars with the amp.
If you have a regular radio,
you don't even have that harness. So your harness is going to be fine and you don't have to do any of this work.
And you'll know it's a monsoon by that little box that's mounted in the back corner. It says monsoon on it. You can't miss it.
Normally mounts about there. Is there a CD changer handy?
I have
the CD changer mounts here and plugs to that.
Actually, you can see it over here, Cooper. CD changer's right here.
Oh, here's one.
And the monsoon mounts back here.
Yep.
You guys know I'm not a fan of this
Me
these
either.
days.
Chuck it.
Is that it?
Yeah.
2 ohm, 4 ohm. What was the difference
I was
again?
thinking
Other than 2 ohms?
we can put that in here. I was thinking we would do a specific
when we do the
stereo
speakers.
equipment, like what speakers to get.
You know
Here's
what?
that other Bluetooth thing. Here's
The video after this one, we'll do a stereo install video. For now, this is just getting the amp up under the seat here. Okay, everybody, we're here doing the final wiring on the VW Beetle for instructions. Andy has been kind enough to walk us through even the colors of the wires, and we're going to trim them upstream a little bit. The way I used to do it is I used to actually take the plug, route the wires to the trailer converter, and then have the LEDs. That works, of course. But Andy's already got all the colors down. Take it away. You can tell him how you do it up a little inside the cabin. He mounts the converter.
There's a natural Y in the wiring harness right here at the driver's side left corner that works really well to access everything you need. There's a couple of wires you've got to trace down whether it goes to the passenger side or the driver's side. So that's why I like this area. In addition, once you get the bed on, it makes it easy to tuck this up underneath the pieces of floor support. So if you do take that panel off, it looks really nice and clean ahead. So you're going to get with the kit, you'll get a trailer light converter. And basically it's a 5-wire in, 4-wire out to combine your flashers or your turn signals and your brake light into one signal so that the lights provided with the kit, it's 2 elements. It's a LED, so it's not an element, but the LEDs will have only 2 wires going to them. The converters come with a handy code on them, so you know what wires these are. So now all we need to do is, it's kind of hard to break it out on this one, but for example, the white is ground, the brown is tail, left turn, yellow, brake is red, right turn is green, and then the outbound. So you look on your converter, figure out the 5-wire goes to the car end. So we're going to take those 5 wires and get the source of light from the car. You bring your harness out a little bit, and we'll just go in order here. Ground being white, ground on the VW is brown. So you'll see in the harness is this big conjunction of several grounds, that black tape there with all the brown wires coming out. One of those you unhooked when you were cutting the car. Snip off the tail, save the tail. It's gonna look something like that. Snip off that tail from the wire, save that for later, and join with the pink crimp shrink connectors that are provided with the kit. Hook that up. All right, so now we have ground coming from the car. Brown wire on the converter is your tail lights. There are 4 wires in this bundle that will provide you input for tail light. You can take any of them, but I recommend using the driver's side just to keep color coding easy, and that's the gray with a black stripe is straight tail light. So let me follow that back. I should have pulled that out a little further. Tail light, brown one, brown one, brown one. Here we go. So there you can see the gray with black stripe wire, and that provides you your tail light input. When we get to tail light output, there's a difference, but we'll get to that in a moment. You can see here, there is a second gray with black stripe for tail light. No big deal. At this point, it doesn't matter. All you need is one of them. Either one of them will work. All right, the next wire you've got to wire is yellow, which is your left turn signal. So driver's side turn signal. On all the Beetles I've taken apart, it's all been the same. That's black with white stripe is left turn. So there you can see it's a black wire with a white stripe. Okay, connect that with your little crimp connector. Don't forget to heat shrink them when you're all done. Next wire we get is a red, which is the brake light. The color coding for the VW is red with a black stripe. So there's your red with black stripe. Now again, there's a big bundle here of several red with black stripe. Really doesn't matter which one you pick. There's a couple of them in there. Oh, I can't see the other one. I may have trimmed it already. Doesn't matter which one you get. It's going to give you the signal. That's your brake light input. And then the last one we have is the passenger side turn signal. That's black with a green stripe. So there you can see, makes it kind of convenient. Your green lead from the converter goes to the car, black with green stripe. Okay, now you are all wired for your input to the converter. Little bit more confusing on your output, but not terribly. So that pigtail that we cut off the ground before that I said to save, crimp that on the white output end, the 4-wire end of your converter. Later on, we're gonna put that, don't forget to get that ground on. I like to use this stud. There's a bunch of places you can put it. You can put it on the bolt that eventually you'll be bolting the bed down with. You could use one of these already existing riv nuts. You just got to take the paint off so it'll make good contact. You can figure out where that goes. My personal preference is that stud right there. Okay, next one is brown output is your tail light output. This is where we start to get a little bit confusing. We need this output to go to both sides of the car, both the passenger and the driver's side. So we actually need to put 2 wires into that crimp connector. So you can see here, we talked earlier about the gray with black, and for the passenger side, it's gray with red stripe. So those are the 2 wires going to the tail lights of the car. Here's the catch me part. There are 2 leads that look identical for each side of the car. So if you look there in the harness, you can see 2 gray with black stripes going to the driver's side. And on the passenger, so this is the harness going towards the passenger side. There are 2 gray with red stripe going to the passenger side. How do you figure out which one you need? You're probably going to need to use an ohm meter or a test light. Simply cut one, strip it back, and then in the plugs, let me grab the right one. So there's the turn signal. I'm sorry, that's the marker light. So the marker light and the actual tail light have the same color coding. So there's a gray with black and there's a gray with black. That's the actual plug that we're going to use for the tail light. You could use this one and trim it, but why not use the one that's in the bundle? So stick your test light, ohm meter, whatever you're using, into the plug. Check the wire that you cut. If it doesn't light or give you good continuity, then check the other one here at the bundle. Do the same for the passenger side, except the passenger side is coated gray with red stripe. Get the correct wire and then put them both in on that brown connector coming from the converter. Yellow is going to go to the driver side or the left side brake and turn signal now. So that's going to be the red with black stripe that comes to the driver side tail. So you can see from the harness that I know that's the correct one. You may have to pull the harness a little bit and trace the two wires to figure out which one is which. But the yellow one needs to go to the driver's side, so when you turn your turn signal on, it's the driver's side that lights up. Then all you have left is the green one, which is the passenger side turn signal. It's the same color code, but again, you pull that harness back a little bit and find the wire that's going to the right-hand side of the car. Here you can see the harness going to the passenger side. There's the red with black stripe wire. Make those connections and you should be all good. I highly recommend going ahead and testing it. While it's all open, before you loom anything up or you get too far, just go ahead and check your lights. Turn the switch on, okay, there's our tail lights. Hit the brake, and it should be a little bit brighter on each one. Now remember that you got to have the key on for the turn signals to work. So there's left-hand turn signal, right-hand turn signal, so we can tell that we've got it wired correctly. Now you'll notice this one is not hyper flashing. The LEDs generally will give you hyper flash only on turn signals, not on hazards. But we've put a switch in to eliminate that hyper flash. We'll have another video here. You can scroll down a little bit on YouTube. We'll cover that in another video, how to get around that. Don't forget to turn the car off, take your key out so it doesn't go dead while you're working on it.
And then we had one more. We were going to talk briefly about wiring the third brake light in this video, just in case you want to do it all at once. I mean, it can't hurt to just go through. The aftermarket third brake light has not only the lights on when you turn on the headlights, but it also has the brake light, unlike most factory lights where it's just the brake light. And I love the piece. I mean, we're going to give you the part numbers and everything to run, but you've already got the wires going to the third brake light from the hatch. And do you know what the colors are from the hatch?
We've already talked them. It's the same color coding. My personal preference is, rather than trying to unravel and having a wire that does it, if you unravel this is the plug for the hatch plug, rather than unravel that, which only gets you to about here, and you need another 1.5 feet or so there to get to the tail light, I just go ahead and tap into the harness right here at this corner, and these are the two wires that I'm running up for the third brake light.
And you already know the colors from doing this.
At this point, where we talked about, there are 4 wires that are red with the black stripe, right? One from each side coming in, the feed coming back from the car, and then the branch to send it up for the factory that would sit about here in the hatch. Right. But when you look into the harness here, there's only one red with black stripe that does your brake lights.
Gotcha.
So I cut that, do a 3-way connection with a longer wire to come up here, and that gives me brake light input here.
Gotcha.
For the tail light that you are not using here, and you can use either left or right input, it doesn't matter. So it can be the gray with black stripe or the gray with red stripe. It's the same, the car is determining left and right, but it doesn't matter. Either one will give you. And you can pull that out of the harness. So I've pulled that back when I was pulling the harness out to do the amplifier. At the same time, I pulled that wire back. That wire from the harness gets me to here. So I just crimped on another piece. So I do have a crimp fitting there, but that will get me to the feeds there. The last feed that you'll need on your third brake light is ground. You can simply put a set screw into the steel and have a pigtail, much like we did on the converter. A pigtail 10 inches long to a good ground. Make sure you sand the paint off so you get a good ground. But that way you're only running 2 wires that distance.
Awesome. And the only challenge on the third brake light, if you don't have a sunroof, is your wires come out and you have to kind of disguise them, tuck them around. It's a little bit of a challenge. Without a sunroof, you gotta be careful running that wire to the third brake light because the headliner is higher. There's not as much space there and the light is actually visible. And so you just want to cover it, make it look nice. But other than that, thanks, Andy. Remember, worst case, if you don't want to do taking the harness apart, you're doing it anyway for the CD changer and the amp.
If it's a car with a harness, I keep forgetting the 4 cars here all have amps.
Right.
Not every builder has a car that has an amp. So a lot of those guys won't have to pull all that back.
So if you're not taking the harness apart, you've still got the factory brake lights and parking lights right outside the car that you can tap into, mount the trailer thing on the outside, the converter, and just run your wires with a little harness. This is cleaner and nicer and more factory, if you ask me. I mean, for an extra 20, 30 minutes of pulling wires apart, you get something that just looks, it looks like it came from VW. So anything else? That's about it. I mean, people ask about the wiring on the car. That's the wiring on the car.
That's it. It's easy.
That's it. So, you know, sometimes we explain things in super detail. So if you're doing this live, we've hopefully got every single wire and every color that you need. So thanks, Andy, again. And that's the wiring for the Smith Beetle.
One more little piece that will save you some time in doing the wiring for your rear lights is as you cut, you're gonna cut right through this. You're gonna remove that wiring and grommet. You can unplug it from the harness, right, to get it out of the way. But now you've cut through that hole, and these are your license plate lights that we're gonna reuse those leads. So the simple trick is to remove this grommet down here, and that grommet will fit right in that hole. So it's pretty simple. Remove that grommet, feed those 2 leads back in, and make sure you get that grommet seated. Now when you route your wiring after the bed is on, all you got to do is plug those leads back in, and you've got the wires right here for your license plate light.